at one point or another, we drive through our local strip of shops in some areas, and you're scratching your head. You're thinking to yourself, man, is this the death of the local strip? There's a lot of vacancies. Stay tuned. We're going to give you some unbelievable observations.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Bergio, Mark Novak, episode 554, the death of the local retail strip. There's probably, when it comes to real estate, when it comes to, if you think of that barbecue with friends on the weekend, there's probably the perception of your local strip is probably one of the biggest factors on how you judge how the economy is going on a very large scale, how the area is going, and just it really either gives you good confidence and a warm and fuzzy feeling about your local area, or if you're visiting a friend in their area that you're not familiar with, I think even if you don't think you're judging it, when you drive into their place and you go to the shops, if you see a lot of vacancy, you see a lot of graffiti, you will instantly think, oh, maybe things aren't that good, it's quiet. You'll either judge the area or judge the local economy, whatever's sort of going through your mind. And then on the flip side, if you drive through and it's busy, there's a lot of people out dining, big lines, nice, not even necessarily new buildings, Mark, just clean, respectful. You would have a perception there, and then you relate it to you go to that barbecue and the first thing you may say is things are tough. I noticed a lot of empty shops and how that can affect. Mark, would you sort of agree with that sentiment that local precinct can have on people, even if they don't know it?
It's scary. It's scary going through and seeing those like in the old Western movies where the thing rolled through the town, the tumbleweed. But I think the big guys had a lot to do with this. You had your Woolies, you had your Aldis, you had your Coles formats putting into their formats, fruit shops putting into their formats, bakeries, liquor shops, and so it started to suck up a lot of those local shops. But it's pretty interesting what I've seen. And Michael, what started off our conversation early this morning was how busy the local leasings in our area have been with commercial properties. Do you want to explain what we've been seeing there with everything getting up with because traditionally there used to be a lot for lease in Dee Why or Brookvale, Collaroy. What's been happening and what do you reckon that's going to do in the future? I would also love people's feedback if they've got any questions or comments. Virg?
Yeah, so one of the most surprising, strongest markets in commercial has been the leasing side of things, and in particular retail. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic where you're thinking nothing's going to happen, especially businesses, and that's been the case for some of the larger commercial stuff, but a market that's been very strong and what we really need it to be was your shops from 20 to 80 square meters throughout Brookvale, throughout Dee Why, because over the last, say, 3 years, Brookvale suffered a lot of vacancy. And exactly what you said, Mark, when you look at the Woolworths, when they basically put 10 businesses into one, the banks really hurt Brookvale when they downsized from 500 square meters to 100 square meter shops and then moved to Dee Why. Brookvale had a lot of vacancy, and then Dee Why had several new developments, which only took away one or two big shops, and then when the build, there was 15 new ones. So there was a lot of supply and not much movement behind it, and that was probably because anyone would drive through Brookvale for the last 3 years and be like, it's struggling, a lot of vacancy. But the last year, I reckon 90%, if there was 20 empty shops, 18 have been filled, which has been a very, very surprising but super really, really good for the local area, because now you start seeing, instead of agents for lease signs, you start seeing new signage, new brand, new life coming there. And we saw it probably initially in DY first, and then it overflowed to Brookvale, which is very pleasing for the area as well. What was the second part of the question you wanted me to go into, the future?
What you said was interesting with banks. That's another format. So the Woolies format sucked in a lot of businesses. The banks format was a bit of a honeypot. So a bank in a local strip used to actually generate a lot of people coming to that local strip. Then they would buy their milk or bread or meat or whatever while they're at the bank. And because those banks have gone to such smaller formats or even pulled out of those local areas, it's killed the honeypot. Because the Woolies has opened up these big formats internally. They've already got the people shopping, and then they're pushing all the other formats down their throat, like dairy, meat, bakery. What does it leave the local strips to offer? Because what you're saying is that we're now seeing, being the commercial expert you're now seeing a lot of local stuff get rented. All that local strip shop stock get rented and go. So who is it going to, and why?
Yeah, because that's a good point. Because if you look at traditionally the local strip, it had your banks, it had your butcher, it had the greengrocer. And sometimes you still got a little bit of that, or they're completely gone. And then you'd have your bank. Like most shops may be 10, and that would be full of it. And that's where people thought the local shops are dead, because it's like, well, there's no more banks. A lot of it's online. They're smaller, and you're not having necessarily the butcher. So we're seeing a lot of barbers, hairdressers, especially for the male and female, having both. There, you're seeing a lot of tattoo artists. We had one in Narrabeen, two in DY, one just went in Brookvale. That's going through there. So we're seeing a lot of services.
PT? PT? Personal trainers, gyms? Training
studios. Then food's always a big one. That's probably a bit more prominent. Fast food, coffee. What else? And I think a lot of people who may have traditionally been wanting a bit more marketing and presence, where they may not have had that before. I'm just trying to think of a business. Where was it? Well, a few real estate officers did the first floor approach, and now they've come back to the main strip because they understand the presence. We're seeing more dentists come to the main strip, chiropractors, so a lot more service as well. So it's been an interesting transition to see throughout. But what we are seeing with the trends is the demand's more for smaller properties, under 100 square meters, under 50 square meters, where traditionally your butcher would have had a large premise, especially if they cut the meat on site. The grocery store, same on site as well, and the banks. So maybe instead of having 3 shops at 200, 300 square meters each, 900 square meters of retail, the new format would probably be 15 small shops, all taking 50 square meters each as well. So that's been a big change we're seeing.
It's definitely the future. So guys and girls, I reckon if I had to have a punt, the word would be customization. People who don't want the cookie cutter large format meat or groceries or fruit and veg, people who want to treat themselves a little bit to something special, like a PT trainer or beauty. Beauty's been a big one. That's interesting. So I think customization, a lot of our local retail shops, where they used to be more to the masses, now they're to a smaller group, but an isolated group, but they service that group really, really well. Just like a unbelievable butcher or an unbelievable coffee shop or an unbelievable ice cream shop like Chill Bar on DY. They're just specifically sticking to a task. Butter, Manly? Cookies you like, Burge? butter.
Oh, is that who they are? Oh, from okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get it. I don't know.
from Manly. So
from Thinger.
so they're sticking to one exact field and doing it really, really well. And they're not competing with selling cookies in Woolies. They're just doing their thing. They're the things that are doing really well in our local shops, and I love it. I reckon it's so exciting.
You're right. We're seeing an emergence of a lot of businesses and products which are highly specialised, and they're sort of pushing through. Where you may traditionally have had a business do 20 things and they sort of that we can do everything. You're seeing a lot more specialised. Also in the health, we're seeing a lot of vegan stuff, gluten-free, specialty, words probably specialty shops. We're seeing a lot of them replace where your bank would have been on the main strip as well. Because, so I definitely think the retail strip is not dead. There's always a demand for it. The community needs it. The local area needs it. And I think that could be one of the worst things if those, like think of a suburb, you've got your 10 little shops or 5 little shops. If they were to go, the convenience, and especially I think a lot of people have a lot of memories of, especially if you've got that little convenience store that's been there 80 years. Everyone knows the family who runs it. They're probably sometimes one of the hardest ones where you hear suffer because of the big box stores. Like a lot of people love the big box stores, the convenience, all that stuff. But where you sort of, I don't know if resent's the right word, but you sort of think, is this right? When you see that mum and dad's store that have been there for 60 years, they can't compete with a Woolworths, they can't, or the butcher that can't compete with Coles. That's where you sort of think, you sort of second guess how things are going. But yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to add on to that, Mark?
Mate, I think it's interesting. So, in summary, all in all, good morning, Michelle. Look after your locals. Took the words out of my mouth, Mark, and really doing something. These shops are doing something really, really well. And you know what, Michael? I think some suburbs are more early adopters than others. Call this a churn that we're talking about, where that local strip shop just emptied out and got sucked up into nothing, into vacancy, and then it suddenly all rented out. Some suburbs will have gone through that churn already. Some suburbs may be going through that churn as we speak. But make no mistake, the need for retail shops is as big as it's ever been. We've seen everything rent out in our local. Make no mistake, the customization is well on its way. People actually love it. They love spoiling themselves. Like I know those butter boy cookies that are in Manly. For so people will, and they pay a fortune for them. They pay a fortune for those cookies as well. So people will, for customization, people will pay a premium to support their local, to get the absolute best, and they're the businesses on your local strip that are going to dominate the next 5, 10, 15 years ahead of us.
And just what you said there before just reminded me, like, so anyone who's watching who's local, sometimes the vacancy isn't a sign of a bad economy. There is sometimes that natural progression. And it takes me back to Narrabeen, Pittwater Road, where Westpac used to be, on the corner, where there's probably about 20 shops, but there's a good or 8 near the corner. And at one time, there was probably 6 of those 8 or 5 of the 9, majority, probably 60% empty. And I remember selling one of the buildings and leasing the other. And a lot of people were just like, oh, the economy sucks, Narrabeen sucks, this retail's dead. But when you take a step back, and I remember speaking to them going, it's just let's look at who left and how they went. You had, of those businesses, I think if there were 6 that left, 5 of them had been operating for 20, 30 years, and they left because they retired. One was the hairdresser, one was the butcher, rather than not surviving. And then because commercial can take 3 to 9 months to rent out a property, it's not like they move out, it injects straight away. Everything gets rented in time. So where Brookvale, some of the vacancy was caused, the banks left, and there was zoning talks changing. So a lot of landlords sort of were waiting as well. DY, same, a lot of new stock injected. So there is more to meets the eye sometimes, and it's not always worst case scenario. Some of it's a natural progression. So, yeah.
Big time.
Thank you, anyone and everyone. Thank you. Cheers.
Take care. Thanks, Virgin. Cheers. Hopefully we helped you.